Welcome, everybody, to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, aka Wishes Mama, and joining me is my wonderful co-host, Kate, aka the Disney Cicerone. In this episode of Mom Street USA, we are bringing our Taking Different Ages to Disney series to a close, and we are going to be talking about taking teens to Disney and giving you guys some of our tips and tricks and hopefully helping you if you are in the realm of planning your trip with your teen to Disney. So that's the goal for today. Kate, how are you doing today?
I'm hanging in there. We're barreling towards the holidays at an unprecedented pace, and I'm not ready. So nope. But other than that, I'm very excited for this topic, especially because I have now a teenager and an almost teenager that I have taken to Disney. And so it's a very, very different world than a lot of the other ages that we've talked about so far, because they are growing into adulthood, but not quite there yet. And how do you interact with that? What do you do? How do you plan your vacation maybe a little bit differently when you have a teen going along for the ride? So even if it's not your teenager, maybe you're traveling with somebody who has a teenager, a family member, a friend or whatnot, this I think will be helpful for lots of people. So just like everything else, we're going to dive right back into, like, before you go to the parks, we're going to go to at home. What do you do to prepare? And so we're going to talk about packing a little bit. So Jackie, what do you got here for packing tips here?
Yeah, I mean, packing with teens is probably the easiest of all of the age groups that we've talked about. You know, they're just like little mini adults, so you can give them a lot of that responsibility of like, hey, this is what you need. You know what you need. You know what you need to wear every day. And then let me remind you of some of the extras. We did a whole bunch of information about packing in episode 2 of Mom Street way back 2 years ago at the beginning infancy of our podcast. So check back there if you want more details. But as far as packing goes, we did talk about ordering in some of the other episodes. So I just want to touch briefly on if you are someone that is traveling and wants to plan to order some stuff ahead of time and have it delivered to your resort after your check-in. Things like snacks and groceries, again, are still a great option if you want to order that. There are tons of different ways you can do that through delivery services or grabbing an Uber to go and do a pickup or, however you want to do that. But that can be especially helpful if you've got teens that need extra snacks throughout the day, which a lot of teens do. If they, bigger kiddos means a bigger appetite. So that's always helpful. And also just in general, if you've got picky kids and you want to make sure you have some of their favorite snacks with you. And ask them what they'd like and include them in that process. If you're someone who is planning on grabbing groceries for a breakfast and you're like, hey, what do you want to have to eat before we go into the parks? Or if you double check with them, like, hey, I know you typically like to eat this before school. Is that what you want when we go to the parks? Giving them the option to be included on that.
Yes, most definitely. I think at this age, it's definitely a little bit more of a partnership, rather than, especially that's true of all parenting. I think when you get to this age is you move from this place of, kind of directing your children to more like coaching your children, walking alongside them as they're starting to figure things out. And I think you can apply that same kind of concept to planning your Disney trip as well.
Yeah.
I talked about in a previous episode, the way that I help my kids pack is that I will actually use the Notes app because we all have Apple devices. So I'll make a note and I'll make like a checklist for all the things that they need to remember to pack. And they can also edit it too if they need to add their own things onto it. But I share it with them. And so I'm able to see the things that they've checked off their list that they've packed. And I'm also able to like duplicate it and use it again in the future. But then I just share that list with that note with them. And then that's the way that then they take the responsibility of packing. And I can kind of keep an eye on the process and just make sure that they are packing the things that they need.
Right.
And I do kind of like check their suitcases just to make sure because, people, even I forget things,
Oh, all the time. Packing is such a headache for me because I'm always just like paranoid that I'm going to forget something. So I feel that.
Yeah. And I do have one of my children gets very overwhelmed very easily, gets anxiety about packing. And so sometimes I have to walk with her like step by step, like, okay, we're going to pack our shirts. And I'll just sit in the room with her. Like, let's just pack our shirts and like just kind of like move down the list with her and give her that space to do that. So not all kids can kind of, pack the same way. So you might have to do a little bit different hand holding or a little bit like more supervision or not, depending on your particular child. But definitely allowing them to have feedback into the process and giving them a responsibility to do it themselves rather than doing it for them, of course, at this age is key.
Yeah, and not only that, but letting them pick, do they want to do Disney bounding outfits? Do they want to do themed outfits? Do they not want to do any of that? You kind of got to let them pick. And also, like you talked about, supervising and making sure that they're making smart choices for the weather, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Because especially if you're going to Florida, if it's summer, if it's going to be rainy, if you're going to Disneyland during the rainy season, like you got to make sure you have what you need to be comfortable as much as you can be in a downpour. Or if it's going to be chilly at night, making sure they've got enough, sweatshirts or long sleeves or whatever it is that particular child needs. But just, letting them pick out that and letting them pick out their accessories. We talked a little bit about this last episode with kind of those older school age kids. If they want different ears or they want to, do different lounge fly bags to match or, whatever they have that they want to do, giving them the ability to do that and helping them through that.
Definitely. I have a comment from Disney Dad that says we double checked what our 21-year-old packed when we went to Disney back in June. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily, and I still check to make sure my husband has what he needs. So it doesn't age expiration date for this, I think.
No. Well, and I think it's one of those things that like the basics are probably there, but it's those little extra things for Disney that you have to think about. Like, if you do magic bands and you want fans or misters or cooling towels or ponchos or whatever it may be, that's kind of your little like extra, not the norm things. Those are always the ones that I feel like it's like, okay, we need to double check each other to make sure we have what we all need.
Yes, most definitely.
And sometimes I put myself in charge of those things and just put them all in my bag instead.
Yeah, it's once they get to this age when they're older, you really just they have to start having some responsibility for themselves. But if they forget something and then it becomes your hassle to try to figure out how to get it,
right,
that's I think why we're doing a little inspection and stuff, make sure everything is there that they need. But
yes,
speaking of bags, shall we talk about park bags? You kind of mentioned lounge flies and whatnot.
Yes.
So definitely take some time to find a good bag for your teen to carry their own stuff in. Whether that's a lounge fly mini backpack, those can be kind of on the spendy side too. So if you don't already have one, maybe something that's a knockoff kind of version of that, or something that is just a smaller bag. The belt bags, that go across their chest. Those kinds of things that are popular with teens. Definitely probably need some sort of bag though for the park, especially to carry something like a water bottle, poncho, snacks, a charger, which I recommend, a fuel rod, which actually just happen to have one right here.
Well, it's just convenient.
So convenient. So if we haven't talked about these an awful lot on the show, this is once in a while, but I am a Fuel Rod affiliate, so full disclosure. But these actually are super helpful though in the parks, in the Disney parks. You can swap these for free. So what they are is a power bank. And even the new ones have like an indicator light on here. It tells you how much power they have left. But they come in a kit that comes with I don't have the whole thing here, but they come with a whole bunch of different chargers. So you can it will charge virtually anything that you probably have in your bag. And then when the power is gone and there's nothing left here, you just go to one of the kiosks that are in all the Disney parks and you just hit swap and you stick it in and it'll give you a fresh new charger without you having to plug into a wall somewhere and wait for your phone to charge, and you don't have to take your own charger that then depletes and then you just have to carry around a dead battery all day. So fuel rods, I think, definitely get them on Amazon in advance if you can, because usually you can get 2 for the price of 1 that you would pay for in the park pretty much. So it's definitely worth it to do that. But these are actually really great for teens too, who have a lot of devices that they're carrying around, whether it's, my son has a phone, my daughter has a Kindle that she likes to read in line, whatever you need that you want to be able to charge. These are really helpful. And I just give one to each of my kids and say this is yours for the trip. Don't lose it, because then you won't be able to charge your phone.
Yeah. Well, and they're so lightweight, which I think is and convenient, right? With teens, that's what you need. You don't want them to be carrying around. A lot of us probably have those big, giant power banks that we use when we're not traveling around the Disney parks, when we're able to have something heavier. But these are so lightweight and easy to use.
You can like hang from your phone.
Yeah.
Literally. It's so
Yeah.
lightweight.
So, and if you don't want to use a fuel rod, then don't use a fuel rod, but just something that is lightweight and small, but will still get you a full charge is what you're going to want to look for when it comes to chargers for your teens.
Yeah. But they're definitely really helpful. Make sure they also have the cable to charge the phone because it's not really helpful without that. And I usually tend to carry a couple extra of these because they're so small and lightweight. I just carry a few extras just in case they lose theirs so that we have an option to charge.
Yeah, because not all of the Disney parks, like it's not easy always to find the charger that you need. Some of the gift shops have chargers, but they don't always have, there's so many different kinds, right? And they may not always have what you're looking for. So definitely come prepared with that.
Yeah. And these ones for the fuel rod are USB-C. That's the output for it is USB-C. So if you have something that's a USB, like it's not going to plug into this one. It will plug into the old versions, which if you swap those, they'll give you a new version. So
yes.
Anyway, so make sure that they have that as well. And I also did some non-negotiables for things that your kids can carry, your teens can carry in their bags, like the things I listed above, like water, a poncho, especially if it's Florida, not necessarily California, snacks, and a charger. Those are like non-negotiables, and they'll carry their phone because they're not going to leave that behind. So I don't have the right to say it's non-negotiable. But then they can decide above and beyond like what they want to bring. So like my son really loves to have a Mr. Fan because he hates the heat and he just wilts in any kind of heat. And then they also like their cooling towels and stuff. But I'm not going to like force them to bring all those things if they don't want to carry that much stuff. But they have to carry the bare minimum. So that they are, can take care of their own health and well-being. Yeah. And I'm not going to carry it. And I also say I let them know that anything that they pack, they have to carry for the whole day. So, or at least until we come back for a break to swap stuff out. So I'm not going to hold their bag if they overpack and it's too heavy for them. Every once in a while, we'll give our kids a little bit of a break and like hold their bags because some of them are younger. But it's like, if you're going to pack your bag and you're deciding what's going in there, you have to just be aware that you're going to carry it all day, full stop. I'm not carrying your bag for you.
Right.
That's just me.
Yeah, well, and I mean, kids are, yes, they're used to backpacks for school, but they're not used to carrying a backpack around for 8 to 12 plus hours at a theme park where it's hot and they're tired. So thinking about, we talked about last episode, what types of bag, finding a lightweight bag. And if you find that their Loungefly is not lightweight, then you may just have to have a conversation with them about like, hey, I don't think this is the most practical bag for you in this moment. And that could be any of the bags that they might want to take with them. So just keep that in mind, especially with these teens, because they may be like, oh, it's fine. But 6 hours later, it may not be fine anymore.
Yeah. And it definitely will hurt your shoulders after a while with a really heavy Loungefly, because I do that a lot when I have to carry my extra gear and stuff. And it does. It hurts. But, and I get it. So just reminding them that things get heavier as the day goes on. So start out light, and then you'll have the good news is like if you're drinking your water and stuff, that kind of gets progressively lighter and whatnot. That's usually the heaviest thing you carry. So
yes.
Anyway, all right. So shall we move on to actually physically getting to the parks?
Yes. Let's talk about flying. Kate, what tips and ideas do you have for us for flying with your teens?
Yeah, I definitely, I'm going to say the fuel rods are still a great option for flying. I don't mean to like push them and sound like an ad, but they use them a lot when I fly. And they are in several airports too, but you have to pay a fee to swap them when you pay and when you go to the airport. So just be aware of that. It's not free like it is in Disney. But make sure their devices are charged before you go. A very easy thing for them to forget because they have so much power readily available to them in their everyday life. So if they're flying, they're not all airplanes have those power places to like plug in. It depends on the plane that you're in and the airline and all those kinds of things. Even between the airline, like some Southwest flights will have the newer ones that have a place to plug in, and some of them don't. And you're just like, you're on your own.
Right.
Make sure they also have headphones and remind them about headphone usage in public. And if they have, AirPods or something that, is also the battery is going to run out on that. So, be aware that they need something to charge their case or whatever for that. But I think we've talked about this before. One of my biggest pet peeves is like people who don't use headphones in public spaces.
Right.
It's like, I can't. So just remind them, especially because they might not be used to doing it. They might be at school and things, but they might not be used to being in these public spaces like airports and things like that. If you don't travel very often, that like, let's be aware of the people around us while we are listening to whatever we're listening to on our phone.
It's a very valuable life lesson for them to learn at this age.
Mm-hmm. And, airlines will enforce it too. Like flight attendants will come by and be like, hey, if you want to listen to that, you got to use some headphones. So it's good for them to be prepared.
Yes. Very true. Well, it sounds like, flying, we talked about last episode that the older they get, the easier it is to fly with them, right? Teens, you're not going to have to do very much. You make sure they're sat, make sure they know where everything is on the plane, and then let them play on their phone for the duration of the flight, pretty much.
Yeah, we just let them go. We're like, we just let them go. We're like, just have fun. And they're on their devices the whole time. Sometimes my daughter will read her Kindle, but it's like, that's just what they're going to do at that age, and maybe they'll bring a book with them, but probably not. Like this age is such a digital age for them. And that's just what they do. I do want to mention before we move on to driving that Allie Beth in our chat said, if you're someone who takes breaks often at the room, I recommend crossbodies. And I think when talking about bags, and I think that those are a really great option, particularly for this age as well. Mm-hmm. So, all right. So I don't really have any other tips for flying besides, if you have a really early morning flight, make sure you leave some extra time to get your teen out of bed, because sometimes it's really tough to get them up and about.
Yeah.
Depending on your teen, of course. It's a generalization. But Jackie, do you have any tips for driving?
Yeah, driving with this age, again, is fairly easy. Devices, movies, snacks still. We talked about snacks a lot last episode, but snacks for teens too. A lot of the times, napping in the car, all those things, it's just like, they'll be fine.
There's not a might be old enough to drive at that point. You might be able to share the driving.
Right. So
which is crazy.
Yeah. Right. I'm not there yet. So like my mind is nowhere close to that. You're a lot closer than I is.
I know. I'm like 6 months away from driver's permit. So like, oh man, ready.
Oh boy. Oh gosh. Okay. Anyway, yes. So honestly, it's not hard at that age to have them in the car. You still want to stop and stretch and make them get out of the car. If you stop to grab some food, don't let them just continue to sit in the car. You need to get up and walk around, do the mom thing, right? The parent thing. Like, nope, you got to come with us. Come on, let's go. But other than that, really with driving, it's not a ton that you really need to prep for other than just making sure they have enough to do. But again, making sure they have chargers. If they have a way to plug into your vehicle that you're taking, great. If not, make sure they have chargers with them, because they're likely going to need it, because their face is going to be in their phone or their device for the majority of your trip.
Yeah, and when we did long car trips, when we do long car trips, we do sometimes when we say it's like screen-free time, screen-free hour or something like that, where we'll do kind of like, we'll do those question cards you can ask your kids and stuff like that. We'll kind of like ask the car, and sometimes they participate and sometimes they don't, or we do like the license plate game, or we do, something that is interactive where we're actually like all talking to each other, but we don't do that like the whole way, and we don't force them to do it the whole time, but we do try to do a little bit of screen less time.
Yeah.
Just to make some memories as a family while we're driving and do that. So sometimes we'll have, if they don't get car sick, we'll have them do some reading time too. Like you got to read for 30 minutes before you get on your screen, and just to like break up their brains a little bit from the screens.
Yes. Yeah, because especially, if you're coming from as far as we're coming, that's 14 plus hours in a car. Yeah. So it's a long time to be glued to a device. So yeah, if you can help set timers or help them rotate through the activities that they have that they brought with them, or get their heads up for a little while so they're not just constantly down.
And you can also like stop and see things at this age, like you can go find some places that might be fun to go see, like, I still remember when I drove cross country and we saw the Corn Palace in Mitchell, South Dakota, and we saw, Waldrug and like south of the border is over there on the East Coast. And like those kind of like kitschy, like tourist things can actually be really memorable and fun, especially at this age. So they'll probably complain the whole time, but they'll still probably take a selfie and share it with their friends. So win.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. For sure.
That's getting to the parks. Let's talk a little bit about resorts, which we've mentioned before. Just some general thoughts for this particular age group. Budget probably is your main factor because, ease of getting around and stuff is not, you don't really have to worry about that quite as much unless you just particularly don't want to walk that much to, and you want your resort to not be a spread out or whatever. Take a look at all the resort amenities before deciding on which resort to stay in. And I like that you included this, Jackie, that split stays might be a fun choice at this age because it's easier for them to pack up all their stuff and move it.
Yeah.
And they also might like the, staying at multiple resorts and having that experience, which we have done before. And I still don't like packing up all my stuff, but
it's still annoying, right? But like, if you're going to pick an age to do it with, I would do it with your older kids because, you don't want to have to pack everything up with a toddler running around your room, but it's a lot easier to do
if you're doing all the packing.
Exactly. But if you've got the older teens that can help, it's always much easier to do something like a split stay. And then if you're trying to be a little bit more budget conscious, but you want to splurge for a split stay to get the Epcot evening hours at a deluxe resort, then you can do a night or two at a deluxe resort and do the rest of the week at a value resort. There's lots of different options for what you can do with this age with split stays.
Yes, definitely. And as with everything, involve them with the planning, talk about the hotels in advance with them, unless it's a surprise. But, like if you can, talk about the different resorts, maybe sit down and show them a couple of pictures or things if they're not familiar with it and get their input. Because again, they get more buy-in when you include them in the planning process and then they're more excited about it and they feel like you care about their opinion, and you respect what they would like to do and not do. And that's always a win when it comes to this particular age. So,
right.
Jackie, do you want to talk about value resorts a little bit?
Yeah. So just a couple notes. Again, we've gone into depth about all of these at all the other age groups. We've talked about all these resorts in depth. So scroll back if you're looking for more information. But the biggest thing to remember about value resorts is that these are some of the smaller rooms on property, generally speaking. Not always. Some of them are comparable to some of the moderates. So you can take a look at square footage if you really need to. But just keep that in mind if you've got bigger teens or you've got teens that like need bigger space to themselves. Your values are just a standard size hotel room. They are not a ton of extra space for what you may need. The other thing to consider with these is that they are all one space. They're all one area. There's no dividing. There's no closing doors between rooms, things like that. So if you or your teen or anyone traveling with you for maybe, if they get overwhelmed and they need a separate space or sleeping habits, if you've got some that like to stay up later and some that like to sleep in later, if you're concerned about any of that, just keep those things in mind when you're looking at these resorts for value level, because you're all going to be stuck in one room all together.
Yes.
If that's where you choose.
Family.
Yes. And that may work for you. You may be like, no, we'll be fine. Like I'm not worried about it. Then great. You'll be good to go. A couple things just about the resorts that are in this category. Pop and Art of Animation are great options because of the Skyliner access, especially for teens. Personally, I mean, I haven't had that experience yet, and Kate, you can chime in, but I would feel more comfortable knowing that my kid is riding the Skyliner to get to a resort or to get to a park from my resort than riding a bus, just personally.
Yeah, Skyliner or monorail. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So that's the nice thing about Pop Century and Art of Animation is they do have that Skyliner access. Now, that being said, the All-Stars are also great, especially because they've refurbed all of the rooms. They're pretty much identical to the Pop Century rooms at this point, and they're very budget friendly, but they just don't have great transportation because it's all buses. So again, you've heard us say that probably 1,000 times about the All-Stars, but it's just something to keep in mind when it comes to the different options in that value category.
Yes, most definitely. And with the moderate resorts, they have some better amenities than the value resorts, which we've talked about before. But the pools and water slides are kind of a big one, especially for teens. If any of them like to swim, it's so interesting that I feel like my teen still does like to swim, but they don't want to be at the pool as much as my school age kids want to be at the
Mhm.
pool. So it's, it really depends on your kid and how much they enjoy swimming in general. But for the moderate one, Caribbean Beach has the Skyliner, and of course Port Orleans. You really like French Quarter, and I like Riverside as well. I think those are really great moderate options to stay at. Caribbean Beach is really large. Actually, they're both really large
Yeah.
and kind of sprawling. So just kind of be aware of that.
Yeah, I feel like that's just kind of the gist with any of these moderate ones. They cover a lot of property.
Yeah.
But you will get the little bit bigger rooms and a little bit, nicer amenities. So again, just it really just depends on budget and what you're looking for in the rooms. Same thing goes for deluxe, right? If the budget allows, these are really great options because they're typically in better proximity to the parks, generally speaking. And there's going to be more space, generally speaking, in your room, depending on where you're booking and what you're booking, right? Some of them still have the smaller studio spaces and things like that, but it depends. But many of these will have like a separate master space or just separate bedroom kind of spaces with a common area, things like that, and some of the bigger deluxe resorts too. So if that's something that you want and your budget allows you to book that, those are great options for teens to have their own space and you to have your own space away from them.
Yeah, it's definitely something where I would consider renting DVC points if you're not a DVC owner. I think this is a really great option for that to give you guys all more space from each other and allow you to have some privacy, which I think is really important, especially at this age. This was something that we've done a lot of renting DVC, and it usually is about half of the amount of rack rate for these rooms. And you can, when you stay in the villas, they usually come with like either a full-size kitchen or a kitchenette, depending on the size of your room. A lot of them have balconies. A lot of them have, it's more like staying in a vacation rental where you're like having a space that feels more like a home. And I think that is also really nice if your teenager wants to make their own kind of food because they don't want to eat whatever is available, or, there's just a lot more options and usually a little bit more space. And it just feels a little bit more homey than staying in a hotel room. So
Yeah.
I highly recommend renting DVC. The unfortunate part about that is either you have to get a confirmed reservation that is like locked into dates that you cannot change. You also can't really get your money back. They kind of have like a sliding scale as you get closer to your vacation of how much of a refund you can get, but you pretty much are like locked into that date and that time. And then you also, if you want specific dates, you really have to book pretty far in advance or be really, really flexible about where you stay and maybe doing a split stay.
Right.
So there are some downsides to renting DVC in that way. But there's also a lot of really great upsides as well, because of the space that you get to stay in and the savings that you have for those spaces.
Right. And the other thing, like we talked about earlier with split stays, is you get those evening hours for typically it's Epcot and Magic Kingdom. Sometimes I've seen Animal Kingdom be thrown in there as well for those evening hours. So that's really a benefit because if you've got teenagers, chances are good that they're going to be able to utilize those hours.
Yes.
Because they're usually like a 9 to 11 or 10 to midnight type of time frame when it comes to the Disney World parks. So let me clarify that I should make sure that we know that we're talking about the Disney World resorts with that. So that's a really good benefit of either doing a split stay at a deluxe resort and another resort, or just using DVC points or whatever it may be for deluxe resorts.
Yes. So definitely. And when it comes to Disneyland over Disney World, there are a couple DVC properties, not a lot, some DVC properties at Disneyland. But my choice is always for Disneyland, stay on Harbor Boulevard. Try not to stay in Catella unless you really, really like to walk very far. I think if you have a teen that, depending on the age of your teen and how comfortable you feel, they might want to go back to their room by themselves and whatnot. And if they're really close by and it's still daytime, then maybe you could do that there. Honestly, though, I don't even feel comfortable walking alone at night in that area when it's, really late at night. So be careful in the Anaheim area. There's just all kinds of weird stuff that happened there. So if your teen wants to go off and explore on their own, maybe stay in the Disney property, like downtown Disney, stay in the park. Don't, I would not recommend that they go kind of wander in the area. uh, which is different than Disney World. I think Disney World, they'd be very safe to go virtually anywhere in Disney World. Yeah, so just I would recommend staying closer as always, but at least you can walk a little farther if you need to save some money with a teen. Usually they're not going to make it. They're not going to be like somebody you have to carry or you have to like haul, let's go children. So yeah, so that's kind of just resort choices for Disneyland. So
yes. All right. Are we ready to move on to the parks?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so just some general information. Now, in our previous episodes, we did a lot of like park specific stuff, like at Magic Kingdom. These are some ideas, and at Epcot and Hollywood, those types of things. With this age group, there's not really much more that we have left to say that we haven't already said kind of in our previous episodes, especially this most recent one when we talked about school age, about a lot of just let them choose and things like that. So we're going to give kind of more generalized park tips about
for this
age, because it just to us that made the most sense. So we're still going to talk about this first topic that I feel like we still need to talk about, which is how many days, right, with teenagers. I would say my opinion is 3 to 4 days minimum in the parks to hit the highlights. And I still suggest having break days in between. You guys have heard me say that on every episode so far. With the teens, that doesn't change for me. I still think you should do maybe 2 days in the park, take a break day, and then maybe 2 more would be ideal. I kind of minimum, because you're going to want to just leave time, even though they may be older and they may not want to do some of the, little kid, quote unquote, rides, some of the dark rides and things like that. You still are going to need to leave time if they want to redo rides at any of the parks.
Yeah. And especially these days with, Walt Disney World's new multi-pass system and whatnot, you do end up having to wait in line significantly longer than you used to. Yeah. So leaving time to be able to go on all of those, even hitting all of the major rides, sometimes can take most of the day, depending on what park you're in. So, giving yourself some time to do that and also have time to relax a little bit and go back to the hotel and not have to move at a crazy pace. Although I will say I remember myself as a teen, and I've been around some teens, that go to the parks, and a lot of them are like, go, go, go. I want to go ride, and like rope dropped fireworks. Like I'm in it all day, and they just want to go and do it. And if that's your teen, then, great. But not all of them are like that. Everybody's different, and we have all different kinds of people. So, I think it's also good. All humans need a break after probably the first 2 days, especially at Walt Disney World. I think Disneyland is a much slower pace, and it's a much smaller park. And so it's not as important that you take a break day necessarily for that. I think you can do. I usually recommend minimum 3 days at Disneyland. So 2 days for Disneyland and 1 day for California Adventure. And maybe a park hopper where you can go between them, especially at this age where, like they really they want to do, the thrill rides in both parks and maybe multiple times, and they can bounce between them. I think it's more important to get a park hopper at this age than at Disneyland in particular, than anyone else.
Yeah. Well, and I would think it's this, in my opinion, it's the same for Disney World, because you want to have them have the ability to get virtual queues every morning and then maybe hop to a different park, or there's lots of different situations that, especially if you've got thrill seekers. Now, if you don't have thrill seekers, you maybe don't need the park hopper as much, because they're going to be pretty content with the majority of what, if you've got teens that love the boat rides and all the dark rides and the experiences and things like that, you may not need your park hopper, but they are very helpful if you've got those thrill seekers that want to do the virtual queues and want to hit, they want to do rope drop, they want to be able to go on these things during rope drop and these things during fireworks and all of that. So
yeah, I think, when it comes to teenagers, the appearance of freedom, they like the idea of freedom, because they're in that stage of life when they're trying to kind of start to disconnect themselves from their parents and have more responsibility and have more freedom. So I think the idea of a park hopper where they can go anywhere that they want, I think is I think they enjoy that from what I've noticed.
Yeah.
It's that extra little bump of freedom that they they enjoy. But
Right.
that being said, park hoppers can be really expensive. So if it's just not in the budget for you, just sit down, have that conversation and being like, we're just going to one park per day and we're going to enjoy that park that we're in. And then we'll enjoy another park another day and they'll still have a great time.
Yeah.
So don't worry about it if you can't afford it.
Yes. So true. And like you said, we've talked about that before. It's not, none of it's cheap, right? None of it, no matter what. So do what you can and it'll still be good.
Yeah. We've already kind of talked about midday breaks, so I don't think feel like we need to keep covering that one. We'll move on from there. But take breaks. That's our encouragement. Like if you don't need to, like, you might not need to go back to the hotel for like a nap like you did with your kids, right? They might not need that at this age. Maybe they just need an extended sit down in an air conditioned spot for a little while. Have a long meal or just a long time to just kind of sit down, veg out, everybody kind of like be in their phones a little bit. Like sometimes our brains need a break from being social too. Whatever it looks like for them that they might need a break. But getting out of the heat, especially in Florida, I think is really important in the summertime in particular. Just especially being very conscious of that.
If they're not used to it, right? And they maybe don't realize that they need it. It's one of those things. It's like, no, we're all going to do it together. And then hopefully they'll be okay with it.
Yeah. Disney Dad's saying hydration breaks too. Yeah. So, having some time to get out of the heat and drink some water, especially because they might not be used to drinking, emptying their water bottle multiple times per day, but they need to there, because it's different. So, yeah. And then another tip, then just asking your teen ahead of time what they'd like to do can be immensely helpful in keeping them engaged. I've already mentioned this a little bit, so we won't go too deep into this, but also don't assume that they're too old for anything because they might surprise you by what they like. And I feel like you added this, Jackie.
Is that, yes. Yeah, because you never know, right? Like you never know until you ask, and you may think, oh, we've been on this ride before, they probably don't want to do it again, but it may be so nostalgic to them already at this point if they've been before that they're like, no, we have to go on it. Like, of course we do, so don't discount anything, have those conversations. And if you have to, literally go ride by ride and find out what they want to do and what they don't, or make your priority list, all those things that we've always talked about. But yeah, don't ever assume that they're too old unless you ask them.
Right. Definitely. So like we mentioned with older school age and younger teens in our previous episode, definitely allow them some freedom. So right before we started this podcast, I went and asked my son, who's 14, I said, we're doing a podcast on taking your teens to Disney. What would you want them to know? And he was great. He answered, he gave me some answers. And his biggest thing was like, he's like, if they have a phone and it's safe, he's like, let them go and like enjoy themselves on their own. Like that was his big thing. Yeah. Like, let them have solo time in the parks away from you. Maybe they're with a sibling, or maybe they're with a cousin or whoever you have with you, or if you've brought a friend on the trip, because that's pretty popular at this age to maybe bring a friend along so that they have somebody with them. But allowing them that freedom to go off on their own and explore, they will be so grateful for that. And my son was telling somebody at the dinner we went to last night about how amazing it is to have solo time in the parks and like be on your own at Disney and like the cool things you can like see and the things that you notice. And I'm like, yeah, I love solo time in the parks too. So I get it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a whole different thing when you're like not feeling like you're being, dragged along with the rest of your family all day, when you're really craving that freedom. So it doesn't have to be all day. You don't have to be like, see you at dinner time. You can just be like, hey, like we're going to take an hour or 2 hours, if you want to go. Or maybe if they're younger teen, maybe just like a ride or two, like they're going to go and, do some single rider on their favorite ride or something like that. And then you meet up right afterwards. I usually recommend doing this with teens that do have a device to communicate with you, just so if you can split up, you can meet up. But, if they don't, maybe you have a meeting time, a specific place that you meet up, you could do that. But yeah, I would say that having family time and defining this for them too is so important, and say, this is family time, this is solo time, and like letting them know the plan of like, wow, the day's going to go. Hey, we're going to have family time, rope drop to, noon. We're going to have lunch together. And then after that, if you want to have some solo time, it's up to you, or you can hang out with us, but we'll have some solo time from this time. This is for you.
Right.
And giving that expectation and that they know the schedule, they know what's going on, I think really does make them feel like they're included and make them feel like they being given responsibility to make their own choices about some of the things, some autonomy, which is so important at this age, that they feel like they have some control over something. And that's what my son said too. He's like, they want to feel that way. So
Yeah.
yeah, but
That's so very intelligent of him to like process that all and think back on his time. Good for him.
Yeah. He's great. When he was very clear to be like, make sure you have a phone so you can communicate with your parents and like, but go off and explore a little bit and see things and see what you see. And I'm like,
Right.
yeah, that's great. So
Yeah, I love that.
yeah.
So just a couple other tips. Unless you have a foodie, less table service and more quick service might be a good idea for this age. Just more flexibility, and gives them the ability to be more ride focused, which is typically what you're going to see, like Kate mentioned, with teenage age. But and giving them the ability to like, okay, here's my phone, we're going to mobile order, or hey, put in your mobile order, however you want to do it. But giving them the ability to be more flexible with their eating, so that way they can get on more rides.
Yeah, I feel like we did like one table service per day in our last trip, and while we enjoyed where we ate, I don't know that I would do that again, just because it eats so much time out of your day.
Yeah.
And like my son asked specifically, we were there for his birthday, and I was like, what do you want to do for your birthday? And he's like, I don't want to. He's like, I want to go somewhere where I can get my food and eat it in less than 20 minutes. I was like,
I'm on a time crunch here, Mom. Gotta go.
Okay.
I have things to do.
I hate sitting around and waiting for them to bring my food. I was like,
That's
okay.
fair. That's fair. Because you really don't think about that until your kids are old enough to be like, why do we have to wait so long? Because at home, it's instant, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Or you like call them for dinner and then like dinner's there. Yeah. Right. And so they'll just sit down and like converse with each other.
Oh my gosh. Goodness gracious. That's just terrible.
I mean, again, there will be some teens that actually really love that and love going out to eat and want to try these restaurants and stuff. So this, tailor this to your particular teenager and your situation. And maybe they are a foodie and they would feel super bummed if they didn't go to like some of these restaurants. But maybe like you go to festival kiosks instead if they're a foodie. And so that way you can keep rolling and keep going on things and keep, moving, but still get some really good food that way might be an option.
That's the great thing about Epcot in particular with teenagers is there's like, it's so easy to just keep going because of all the food options, and most of the parks have really fairly convenient quick service. But again, if you've got kids that are really particular or want to try new foods or want to eat more elevated food, you're going to have to probably go to table service at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I do like table service for getting out of the heat and taking a sit down break. So I'm not against table service, especially at Walt Disney World. But just know that it might not be like the ideal for your teenager.
Yeah.
And I will say that sometimes teens do appreciate some extra downtime or resort days to kind of chill and do their own thing at your resort. Depending on your teen, of course, some of them want to just be in the parks sun up to sundown and like all the time. They don't want anything to do with the resort. I think that's boring. But, like my particular teen, like really, really loved our break day when it rained that day. It just worked out really well that it was just pouring. And we were like, well, we just stayed in. He played like video games, on his console. We had a great time. I was like, what he wanted to do was just relax. And I'm like, okay, sure. Like let's do that. I know Disney vacations are not known for relaxing, but doesn't mean you can't. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, well, the nice thing about Disney World especially is like your teen has transportation access, even if they can't drive or don't want to drive, right? Like if they want to go to Disney Springs, they can go to Disney Springs without having to navigate, or you don't have to worry about them getting lost in their car. It's so much easier for them to be able to navigate these different places. It may be a little tricky if they're trying to go like resort to resort. You may have to talk them through that and how to get there and where to go, but generally speaking, it's so much easier for them to navigate and to get around places at Disney than it is, around your town, probably where you live.
Yeah. And, we did something for the first time this last trip that we actually stayed in the pool area with our girls. And my son was like, I'm going to go back to the room. And I'm like, yeah, I guess you can do that now. I was like, yep. So, and then that's the way he also got some extra like rest and break that, was away from people and got some alone time, I think was really important for him to have that in a place that was safe. So,
Right.
he really liked that. That was really fun for him, I think. So,
Yeah. I love this next point that you put on here about your teen may not like being up early and they may prefer evening hours for park time. So just keep that in mind if you were used to taking them as younger children and they really had no say and nope, you got to get up at this time because that's what we're doing. Your teen may be a little bit more reluctant and opinionated about timing. Now, that being said, if they prefer evening hours, that's better suited for Disneyland parks, generally speaking, because they are typically open later, more and on a more regular basis. Disney World parks do stay open, but it's not frequent, and it's usually no, and it's not that late. Like you may get a 9:30 instead of a 9, or you may get an 11 o'clock at Magic Kingdom.
drives me crazy how early they close those parks.
It's 5 years ago. 5 years ago, it was different, and then the world changed, and they had to cut hours. We understand why it happened and how it happened. It's just we can still be frustrated about it.
Yeah, like I as a night owl, it's one of the most frustrating things because I would love to tour the parks at my leisure in the late night hours when all the kids have gone to bed, and have low waits that time. And that no longer exists. Like maybe the last half hour, maybe hour of some parks, you might have light crowds. But if you want to not have crowds at Disney World, you have to get up early, like super early every day. It drives me crazy. Like, I don't want to get up at 5 a.m. every day that I'm there. I would love to sleep in until at least 8, like a normal human.
Right. Like you're not asking to sleep in until noon, but like 8 would be great. But by the time you get up and get to the parks, your wait times are going to be up in
the thick of it.
Yeah. So
which is just, even 8 is early for teens, right? Like let's be legit. Like my teen will sleep till noon a lot of the times, if he was allowed to.
Yes.
But yeah, so mornings can be a struggle sometimes for teens. So maybe if your teen likes coffee, if that's a thing that you let them drink, if that's that's a thing, like, allow them some time to maybe have a wake up routine, some time, buffer time in the morning, to get them up. And I don't know, it's tough. It's tough with my particular teen is tough to get out of bed and likes to wait to the last possible second and make us all late. So just know.
Yeah, and if you're bringing them to Disney, you probably already know that whether or not they're going to be easy to get up in the morning. So doing what you can in the evening to prep for the morning can be helpful. If that's making sure all their stuff is on top of the dresser ready to go so that they just can grab it and get ready. So you're maybe only 5 minutes late instead of 20 minutes late. Whatever you need to do to help you work through that with them.
Yeah, and ears, beers, and cheers here as a comment that says you let your teens do whatever. I always listened, and I would say, like, parenting a teen is a journey. Is like you can. There's parents that do go and just say like we're doing this now and you're coming. And sometimes I do have to say that. Sometimes I do because just the reality situation is like this is something we're doing and you're expected to be there and this is just part of your responsibility of being with the family. But having a conversation with them and listening to what they think and want, I think is way more productive and helpful and also relationship building than just kind of like telling them what to do. And so that's just all the approach I'm taking. And in this particular instance, especially as planning parks, is recognizing that this is just who they are sometimes, is that they don't like to get up early. So maybe they have to get up early 3 out of 4 of the days, but hey, we have a rest day where you can sleep in as late as you want. And that's the compromise, Yeah.
And setting those expectations going into it, right? But that's what we talked about at the beginning, helping them plan and helping them be aware. And, explaining to them the why. I do this with my kids now. Like, hey, we have to get up early because if you don't want to wait an hour to ride Slinky Dog, we have to get there when the park opens so that we can get on it.
Yeah.
And my kids will go,
Otherwise, we're stand in the sun for an hour.
right.
Or more.
Or more, right. So it's again, it's having that conversation with your kids. And by no means are we trying to tell you how to parent your kids. You know what works for you, what works for them, what works for your situation. But this is just, kind of our perspective and what we think works good for kids and teens,
Yeah. We have a comment from Christina. Comment from Christina. It says cell phones were really new when I was a teen, so it's harder to get in touch with family. And I do think we have that advantage now of living in this like technological time where it's really easy to text somebody, like, where are you at? I'm over here, and like, let's meet up here. And it's so easy where I still remember going as a teen and running around the park with my brother while my dad like did his own solo time. I don't know what my dad did during that time. I should probably ask him, but
I'd be so curious. Like, what were you doing?
But it was always meet at the partner statue is always our meet point in the hub. So it's like, we're going to meet at this time in the hub by the partner statue. And when we just would always like make the meeting spot. And that's what we did. So,
yeah. Well, and if you've got your kids' location saved or they've got an air tag in their bag or whatever it may be, it may just be as quick and easy as, oh, here they are. I see them. Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Move on.
Right. Exactly. Just totally different than it was years ago.
Right.
Okay. So another thing that I would suggest is getting them their own My Disney Experience account, and also having them download the Disney app, because that will help them navigate around, find things that they need, find the nearest restroom if they're not with you, like all those kinds of things. Yeah. Ages 13 and up is when you can have your own Disney account. And also the Play Disney app for games and trivia is also a really fun one for them to download, but allowing them to have the park map essentially in their phone, that they can find their own way around. They can look up whatever they need. They can look up maybe a menu for where you're going to eat lunch and like see what kind of food that they want at their own leisure. I think it's really helpful for them to have that app and also kind of have that autonomy of like, I'm kind of in control of like what's happening here in a way,
Right.
And I'm always careful that like that they don't necessarily have access to like change things in our reservation and whatnot.
Right. Yeah.
You have to be careful with that.
Yeah. I was going to say, depending on how much you want to give them and how much you trust them, you could either give them the login to the family one or have them have their own, depending, we talked about giving them, gift cards to spend and things like that, because they can use all of that for mobile order and those types of things. So you just got to be really careful when you're setting up their My Disney Experience account that you link everything correctly so that they have the access that they need to open your room and, get into the parks and those types of things.
Yeah, and also do some safety talks with them about not sharing your room number and things like that with people, with the, whoever. Just sometimes they don't think about that because they haven't really experienced it that much of like, stranger danger and safety and like, here's what we do and do not do with our information in those kinds of situations.
Yeah.
Like you did mention payment, and I would say something that we do, I mean, Disney gift cards are great too, but we use Apple Pay a lot with our kids because I can just like send them money via my phone to their phone, and then they use their phone to pay for things. And it's nice that, we do have magic bands and stuff like that, but those don't have a spending limit. Right. So if they have Apple Pay, then it's like, or a gift card, then it's decreasing and they only have so much money. Right. And then that's it. So if you want to give them some spending money or money to go and get a snack or whatever, and you don't want to hand them cash, which I barely have these days.
Right.
I find something that's Apple Pay or equivalent to that, that's some digital payment, their phone. And then they use their phone to pay for things. And it's nice that, we do have magic bands and stuff like that, but those don't have a spending limit. So if they have Apple Pay, then it's like, or a gift card, then it's decreasing and they only have so much money. Right. And then that's it. So if you want to give them some spending money or money to go and get a snack or whatever, and you don't want to hand them cash, which I barely have these days,
right?
Yeah, I find something that's Apple Pay or equivalent to that, that's some digital payment that they can use, I think is really, really helpful for kids this age.
Yeah. And the nice thing about Apple Pay is you can see that balance, right? With the gift cards, it's not that easy to do because you have to like call or log in or check it or whatever.
Right.
But something like an Apple Pay is a lot easier because you can physically see how much money you have.
Right. So we use Apple Pay a lot in our family. Yes. It's become like a thing. And they think it's great that they have like money on their phone to do something with, but they also only have so much. So they have to budget and whatnot. So,
Right.
another thing at this age is they're probably not going to be necessarily into character meet and greets as much as the younger kids is. Kids are. It doesn't mean that they won't. There's some teens that love getting autographs and love meeting characters, and that's like the biggest part of their trip.
Yeah.
Or that they love a specific character that they really want to go meet. But I have found that the older my kids get, the less interested they are in meeting characters in general. They're like, yeah, it's good. We'll wave to them and we're fine. You know?
I see them. We're good. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Because they know things, and also they're very hyper aware of like how they appear, to their peers and things like that. And like, oh, I'm too cool for that or whatever. Like, so just that age. And then you grow up and we're like, I'm going to go hug Mickey today.
It comes full circle. It'll come back around eventually.
Hopefully it does. Yes.
Well, and that being said, they're going to be more into kind of the behind the scenes or the history or the stories potentially instead of the face value, so to speak, of some of the park stuff. So, getting them interested in that is also something that you can test the waters with before you leave. If you want to watch some of the, there's so many different shows that you can watch and behind the scenes things and the behind the attraction on Disney Plus and YouTube videos and social media. We're all on social media and podcasts and YouTube streamers, live streamers on TikTok. All those types of things are great things that you want to screen what they're watching because they're still under your roof and even if they're teenagers, you still need to maybe just take a look at what they may be consuming. But, those are all good things to do before you go that will get them more excited when you're in the parks too.
Yeah, and you can watch them together too. We'll put on, YouTube or whatever on our big TV and watch stuff together about things. And of course, in my house, we have a lot of Disney history.
Right. Right.
They don't always love it to the level that I do, so I have to rate it in. But, especially with like I have a kiddo who's really into kind of engineering things, like he's maybe not necessarily into like Disney as much as I am, but he loves the idea of like how are things put together? How do they operate? How do they do this illusion? Those kinds of things. And so that information is really important to him to know how are they doing this because he's curious. So that's what he's into. And so we lean into that. So
yeah, that makes sense. I do just want to mention a couple park specific things as we're kind of looking at this age group, because like I said, we didn't really go through park to park specifics. But if you're someone that has never been to the parks before and you're wanting to take teens and you're like, I don't know which parks I should go to. This is kind of the short and sweet guide, my personal our opinions, right, on things. So if you've got thrill seekers, I would suggest Hollywood Studios, Magic Kingdom, and Epcot at Disney World. I think those are going to be your best bets. That's not to say Animal Kingdom doesn't have thrill rides.
I know, it's like an Everest, which is like...
I know. It's kind of on an island out there all alone.
That only Unfortunately, those are like
right.
two. And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Once Animal Kingdom has some of these enhancements coming, I think it'll be better. But until that point, again, maybe you have the ability to go to all four parks and you can. I think you'll be great that way as well. But if you're not sure you're going to hit all four, those would be the three I suggest. If you've got a foodie, Epcot is going to be your park for them to be able to have lots of different kinds of food available to them. If you've got someone that's just kind of like a vibe chaser, like they just want to be there hanging out, they're not really like super into rides or super into food. I would say Magic Kingdom and Epcot, maybe Animal Kingdom if like the animals and like zoos and that type of thing is more their like speed. But I would say Magic Kingdom and Epcot would be my suggestions for those. And if you've got shoppers that really love to find the merch, or really they have they've saved up their money and they want to go spend it on merch, Animal Kingdom is really great for shopping, and Magic Kingdom is going to be another good one as well.
And Disney Springs too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure. So Kate, what do you think I know Disneyland doesn't have as many parks to offer, but do you have any thoughts on those kind of?
Yeah, no, they're almost equal in a lot of ways. I'd say that California Adventure was a little bit more designed with this particular age group in mind. So that you'll find a little bit more things there. They'll have live music and things like that they'll bring in. It's a little bit more skewed towards their age group in terms of like thrill rides and whatnot. That doesn't mean that Disneyland doesn't, and that teens don't enjoy Disneyland too. It's got so many between Space Mountain and the Matterhorn and Big Thunder and all those places like Rise of the Resistance. There's lots and lots of things that teens are going to love at Disneyland too. So, I mean, I was trying to, as you're reading this list, I'm like, pretty much is equal between Disneyland and unless they're doing a festival at California Adventure, what they do pretty often, in which case, food-wise, the foodies might like to go over there and do that. But truthfully, I think they're pretty equal between Disneyland and California Adventure. And I think that they probably enjoy hopping between the two and hitting whatever they would like but in those particular ones. But in terms of like nighttime entertainment, the teens might be more interested in taking advantage of lower wait times than actually seeing the shows. I know that both of my teen and my almost teen have both said, yeah, let's skip the show because I want to go on more of these rides while these wait times are low. Right. And that's fine. I do, as a mom, I'm like, hey, let's go see Fantasmic at least so you've seen it once. Right. And then the rest of the time, we can go do whatever we'd like to do. But I do want them to have the experience of seeing these things because they're meaningful to me. So, right. But it's that being said, we've also had some of the worst experiences having to stand and wait for Fantasmic when they didn't want to. And so being flexible and knowing that maybe that just is not their thing and that's okay. But yeah, sometimes they don't know what they're missing though if they've never seen these shows before.
Right. Yeah. So. Yeah, I think that's a great option if your kids are someone who have seen all of these nighttime shows, right? Okay, let's pick one to do together, right, throughout the week sometime, whichever one our favorite is. And then during the other ones, sure, if you want to go run around and ride as many rides as you can for that half-hour period, go for it.
That's what I do.
I only a lot of us do, I feel like.
Yeah, I only watch the nighttime show if it's my favorite of the shows, and even then only once in a while because I'm there so often.
Right.
It's really rare that I sit down and watch shows.
Yeah. And it really does depend on, have you seen them before? How many times have you been? Have they been before? Do they, there's lots of different situations with that. But generally speaking, I'm even to the point where I ask my kids, do you guys want to watch the fireworks or not? Because they have seen them several times too. So
yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I loved going to Happily Ever After with my girls, and they had never seen it before. And they say that was the best moment of the whole trip was seeing that. And we got Mickey pretzels and watched the fireworks, and they thought that was the best moment ever. And I was like, yeah. And I love the fireworks, and I love if Disneyland ever brings Wondrous back, which I don't think they will, but if they ever do, I will watch that every time because that show makes me cry and it's beautiful.
The music of that show is so good.
I'm so sad that it's gone and we're probably never getting it back.
No.
But anyway, so that's just being said that they just might want to run around and do rides during that time. And that's okay if that's what they want. But just a couple of other thoughts that we have about the parks. Do consider getting maybe a water park package at this particular age if they love to swim. If going to water parks and pools and stuff is their vibe. Water park package might be a great option for this particular age more than any of the others because you don't have to supervise them as closely, I think. Yeah. And let them just go and enjoy.
So true. And kind of in that same respect, doing things like we mentioned earlier for shopping, Disney Springs, Downtown Disney, giving them time in those spaces can be fun, especially at this age where, because they're in the Disney bubble, but they're not inside of a Disney park. So it's a little bit different. You get some more local crowds that come there, but it's still very controlled and safe to where you can let them, go to a couple shops and then meet up at a certain place. And again, the maps are helpful for there, because especially in Disney Springs, I get turned around there every time I go, no matter what. I feel
I
like
know that's so I have to have that map up
yeah.
when I'm walking to like
Yes, me too. It's like I don't know why it seems so foreign when I've been there a bunch, but it's just I can't get the lay of the land there. It's not a hub and spoke pattern, Kate. I can't figure it out.
I'm always like surprised when I suddenly like, oh, the theater's there. Like, wait, how did I get there?
How did I get here? I took a wrong turn. How do I get back to where I'm trying to go? No, the last time we went to Disney Springs, I just told my husband, I said, tell me which direction to turn, because I can't. I can't.
Yeah.
I need you to take the map.
Yeah, it's confusing. And but it's not, it looks bigger on the map than it is like when you walk it, which is the good news. So don't get overwhelmed by the map.
No, but that being said, it is still a good place if you, especially if you've got teens that love to either actually shop or window shop or just look around. And that's kind of their if they love to go to malls and places like that, Disney Springs is a really fun.
Malls anymore?
I don't know. Maybe. Probably not, honestly. Everyone just shops online.
Oh, I saw TikTok today that was like them turning them all into like living spaces for people. I was like, that's where we're at now. Like, oh, we've arrived there. Okay.
Yeah. We're firmly in the age of ordering things online and having it shipped to you next day. So
I get it, but I liked them all when I was younger. So I'm sad with that Sissaperi.
Yeah.
That is what it is.
Yes. Anyway, sorry, Disney Springs is distracting us tonight. Yes, it is a great option for your teens. Downtown Disney, while smaller than, the Disney Springs space, is still, again, another good place if you want to give them some freedom and they want to shop. Those are good places to take them.
Yeah. I also would say look for some extra experiences that your teen might enjoy based on their particular interests. So horseback riding, Fort Wilderness. I did that one with my daughter this last trip, which she loved. They have the Wild Africa Trek or the Starlight Safari over at Animal Kingdom. So you can go like night vision goggles looking for animals, which is pretty cool. Or building a lightsaber or a droid in Galaxy's Edge. They also have like craft classes at resorts. There's all kinds of like sports activities and stuff at some of those resorts, especially Fort Wilderness camp. Yes. Fort Wilderness. Fort Wilderness has a lot of them. We looked it up before. It was like archery and things like that.
Yeah.
So depending on their interest, there's probably an activity somewhere in the Walt Disney World complex that they would be interested in. This is not something, most of these are not available, obviously, at Disneyland, like building a lightsaber, yes, and whatnot, but it's a lot less opportunities there than there are in Disney World. So specifically refer to Disney World for this one.
Yeah, and I didn't even think about that. So I'm so glad that you added that, because some of these have age restrictions on them, right? Some of like the horseback riding and some of the Wild Africa Trek and things like that. So yeah, the older your kiddos are, the more of that's going to be available to them for sure.
Yeah. And, somebody mentioned like if they have their diving certification, doing the diving activities and things like that. So depends on their interests, but definitely look around for some of those extra experiences, especially if you've been to Disney a lot. Yeah. Maybe they would be interested and they're like, we're going to go there again. But like maybe if they get to do something new they've never done before, it might be more interesting for them in that instance.
And a lot of that stuff people don't, especially if they're not frequenters, right? They don't realize that a lot of that stuff is even available. Even something as simple as like the mini golf courses that they have, all of that is so available to them. Or if they're a teen that likes to actually golf, there are golf courses available. The list goes on and on and on. We could never name all of them and not forget something. So yeah. And we did some of that already on things to do outside of the parks. So if you're looking for more information on what is available to do outside of the parks, we did that at one point in time. So go back.
Yes.
Go back and find it. It exists somewhere on our feed. I don't know what number it is. So hopefully you can find it.
Well, I think that's pretty much all that we have for this particular section of talking about going to the parks with your teen. And my biggest advice is just, treat them with a lot of respect and listen to them and what they want. With you make compromises. You both will have to make compromises on either side, but they're getting closer to adulthood and they want to feel like they're independent. So anything you can do to give them safely the independence that they're craving, I think is really, really helpful and will also help them come back to family time being more willing to participate because that can be very challenging at this age. Some of them get very crabby and grumpy and don't want to take photos. And it can be very challenging because they're in a very interesting stage of their development where they want their autonomy. So anything you can do to make them feel more comfortable and a little bit more freedom, I think will be helpful in the long run.
You know, the more you talk about these teenagers, I feel like you're also talking about toddlers at the same time.
Yeah. Well, there's some overlap. So
I'm just over here taking notes for when my kids are teens someday and going, this feels a lot like toddlerhood.
Yeah. And they throw tantrums too. So
not wanting to take pictures, not wanting to do what you tell them to do.
Yeah.
Wanting freedom, wanting to do what they want to do. Wanting to ride the same ride over and over again. It's all the same. It's all the same.
So true in so many ways. Yeah. Except that you don't have to carry them when they fall asleep. You're just
true.
That
drag them along with you. Come on, we got to keep going.
So anyway, that kind of wraps up that section, but we're not completely done with this episode because we have our section we always have kind of at the end of these episodes where we do Ask the Moms, which is a question that is from our Mom Street community that has pretty much maybe something, but mostly nothing to do with what we've been talking about, just to give a little advice about something else. So Jackie, I'm going to ask you this one because this is about multipass and you are the multipass queen. So says, I want to book multipass lightning lanes for my trip. When I look on the app, it is making me book everyone all on the same rides. Is there a way to split this without having to do multiple transactions?
This question. Okay. No, unfortunately, there's not a way to split this if you're talking about pre-booking, which is what it sounds like this instance is talking about. So with your multi-pass lightning lanes, when you go to do your pre-selection, meaning that if you are a resort guest 7 days out from your resort stay, I'm talking Disney World. Again, Disney World can pre-book. If you are 7 days out from your resort stay, or if you are off property 3 days out from your first day in the parks, you can get online at 7 a.m. and book 3 selections ahead of time. That being said, every group that you book together has to be booked on the same rides at the same time. So if you've got someone that doesn't like thrill rides, but, you know, let's say you're in a group of 5 and one of you doesn't like thrill rides, but the other 4 do, you may have to do 2 different transactions depending. If there's someone that's like, I'm just here to do whatever, I don't have a list of things that I need to do, you could still do it all in one transaction and then just tap their band into the thrill ride and have them not ride.
And why would you want them to do that? Why would you want to tap your band in?
Yep. So you have to tap your band in order to be able to then book your next ride. So that is something to keep in mind when you are doing your pre-selections. There's also something to keep in mind that you don't want to book it and then cancel, because canceling does not do the same thing in their system as tapping in. So if that one person didn't want to ride, let's say you booked Space Mountain and that person's like, nope, that's not for me, they still need to go and tap their band. Because even if you go in the app and cancel it for them, it won't have registered that they tapped into a ride and you won't be able to book your next ride for that individual. They'll get
a wrench into the works.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That was a big learning curve for me with this new system. It was fun. So my
fun.
Yeah. So 2 different ways you can do it. You can book everyone together. If you're a person who, like, if you have those people that don't really care what they're riding, but if, let's say, you've got a split group where some of you want to do this ride, some of you want to do another ride, then you're going to have to do two separate transactions. So that way you guys get rides that you want to book. And you can still try to book times close together and overlapping times. So let's say that one of your group just doesn't want to do a thrill ride and they'd rather, they're sectioned into tiers without me getting into too much of the technicalities with lightning lanes, because we've done whole episodes on that. But let's say they don't want any tier 1 rides. They can book 3 tier 2 rides if they want to. And 2 of those could match the rest of their groups. And you can get overlapping times so that way you can still ride together for those particular rides. Then you just have one that was separate from each other. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. It gets really complicated and technical, and that's why I'm here to help, because I understand that it gets really complicated and technical. So if you are someone that's like, I'm in this situation, help, what do I do? Send me a message, because I can help you figure that out.
Yes, Jackie's so good at everything to do with the system, and she's the person I go to when I'm like, help, what do I do? So
yes. So unfortunately, there is not a way to book 2 sets of rides without doing 2 separate transactions. That being said, that also, if you're trying to book multi-pass and single pass rides at the same time, that requirement still is in effect. So if you're trying to book, like, let's say you're trying to book multi-pass together for there's 5 of you, but only 4 of you want to ride Cosmic Rewind at Epcot, which is a single pass lightning lane, you can't book all 5 of you multi-pass and single pass in the same transaction.
Because they'll put all 5 of you on there if you try to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
Yes. So they tried to make it simpler, and they tried to they promoted it as like, oh, it's only one step. You can book it all in one go. But 9 times out of 10 people can't, because not everybody wants to do the exact same things in every park.
Right.
So you're still ending up doing at least a minimum of 2 transactions most of the time. If you're lucky and your whole party's in agreement, then you only have 1 transaction, and you are the person that was created for. So good for you. For you. I'm happy for you. Really, I am. Oh, but yeah, so it's complicated. But again, yeah, unfortunately, there's no way to individualize those bookings when you're trying to do it under 1 transaction.
Yeah. It would be nice if for the single pass, they could just say, who wants the single pass? And you click or unclick the boxes, Yeah.
And you can when you book it separately. You just can't if they're booking everybody all together. So who knows? Maybe that'll be something they adjust in the future. Those little changes, Disney has listened to, the guests and adjusted things before. So that's one thing that I'm hoping. I don't think we're ever going to go back to the previous system that we all kind of miss now, because it was better than this current system. Those of us who
hope Disneyland keeps it. That's all. We're just hoping they hold on tight.
Yeah. I don't anticipate major changes there anytime soon, because it doesn't make sense for them to do what Disney World did, because they don't have the resorts to differentiate the access.
Right. And so many locals wouldn't they already don't bother buying it. So making it even more difficult and hard to get it,
right.
That doesn't make any sense. They even offer it as a discount to Magic Key holders, because so few people use it. Because you don't need to. When you live there, you're like, why in the world would I pay to go on all these rides when I could just go on them for free whenever I feel like it? I'll just go another day.
Right. Exactly. So I hope that someday Disney will make it so you can do more individualized pre-selecting, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Instead, they gave us Lightning Lane Premier Pass, which no one asked for. So, it's fine.
I would love to see statistics on how many people actually purchase that.
Oh, it's selling out frequently. Especially right now during the holidays. It has sold out frequently.
Interesting. But how many of them are selling
I don't know. Right. And I don't know how many they're offering. Those statistics, I don't know. But I do know that the majority of the parks are selling out.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And again, I think that's a time of year thing. I think come January, February, we're not going to see that happening. But it's those people that are taking their trips during Christmas week or Thanksgiving week and going, well, we already knew it was going to be busy. Let's go ahead and foot the bill to pay for this ride access so we can have a better trip than we thought we were going to have, which I get. Like, if you can afford it, great.
But it's not me. I'm thinking about how much that is. I'm like, oh, nope. Nope. Not me.
Yeah. So
I just wait in line with the rest of the schlubs and enjoy the queue.
Me too. Yes. So, oh my goodness. That being said, thank you to those of you who have submitted questions for our Ask the Mom segment of our podcast. If you've got questions that you need help answering, please send them our way. You can reach us at momstreetusa@gmail.com, or we are at momstreetusa on all of the social media platforms. You can find us on pretty much all of them. So you could reach out there as well, or you can message us on our Discord channel. We are a part of our good friend Kirk at Walrus Carp's Discord for Pocket Fam. So you can find our Mom Street USA channel on there, and you are welcome to post questions in there as well.
Yes. So, all right. Well, let's wrap up this episode then.
Yeah.
If we're good, do you have anything else?
Yeah, I just think before we do, we just chat briefly about next episode is going to be kind of a shortened episode. We're going to be chatting a little bit about some of our favorite Disney things, just as kind of a fun little end of the year holiday season reflection, so to speak. So that will be our next episode, something a little bit different than what you're used to. And then we will see what the new year brings. So stay tuned for that, because we'll have probably more information about that coming very soon for you guys.
Yes. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for Mom Street USA. We hope that this series has been really helpful for you to learn about how to take different ages to Disney, and how maybe some tips and tricks and ways to make it easier to do those things, and maybe things you haven't thought about before when planning your trips with your family. So we hope that you've enjoyed this series. We've really enjoyed bringing it to you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Mom Street USA.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.